What's good, everybody? Welcome to the John Katz Show, episode number 47. Being joined by a very special guest today, Dr. Margaret Paul. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Dr. Paul is a PhD in psychology, as well as an author of several books, including Inner Bonding, and a relationship expert and noted public speaker. Well, the reason that I wanted to have you on and the reason I reached out to you was this book, Inner Bonding, which I just read recently, and I was surprised. I looked again very recently that it was written in '92, which I couldn't believe because for me it was just so groundbreaking and revolutionary and different than anything I'd really ever or read or consumed. And I don't say that for the purpose of this podcast, and I had no idea I'd be asking you to come on. But just for anyone listening, honestly, of anything I've read in this genre or at all, therapeutic, self-help, all that, this really changed my mind frame in a way that none of that other stuff has. And so I really wanted to discuss it with you. So I want to get into that. Before we do, tell everybody a little bit, I guess, about your background and how you got into this specific type of therapy, counseling, and developed this very specific framework around inner bonding and so forth.
Well, I came from a dysfunctional family like so many people did. And I was 5 years old when my mom took me to a psychiatrist who told me to tell my mom not to yell at me. And I remember thinking, I'm only 5 and she's not going to listen to me. Why don't you tell her? And my next thought was, I could do a better job than you. And so that's when I decided to do this work. And I practiced for 17 years as a traditional psychotherapist, and I just was not happy with the results at all. And that's when I prayed for a process that would really work, or a teacher or something. And I met Dr. Erica Chopich. She's the co-creator of Inner Bonding, and she had half the process. I had half the process, and Spirit kind of put it together for us, and that was 38 years ago. So I've been practicing it all of that time and working with tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and it is very life-changing, very powerful process, changed my life completely. So I'm delighted to hear that it's had a big impact on you.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by it because I am, I'm pretty skeptical of a lot of these types of things, and a lot of it is very repetitive and so forth. But this, it applies to everything. It uses the term, obviously, inner conflict a lot, but all emotions and all inner conflict, it frames it in a way that really allowed me to process things in a way that I never had. And I pride myself on being so, self-aware and analytical. And I'm like, listen, I already know everything there is to know about myself. But this really advanced my thoughts on so many things that I'd gone, 40 years never even thinking about. Just to give anybody tuning in a little bit of the full title of the book is Inner Bonding, Becoming a Loving Adult to Your Inner Child. And, you hear stuff like that, be the adult, be the parent you never had and all that. But this really gives you logistically specific things to do based on this idea that all emotions come from your child. Even stuff you're dealing with now, the conflict you're dealing with now, worries about the future. It doesn't have to be something that happened in the past. And I never thought of it that way before. And it really allows me to kind of separate things out and see them objectively and actually understand why I'm feeling things. What's always been most difficult for me is the openness. And that's something the book talks about a lot. And I feel like, and from recommending this to people in my life, that's the hardest part. I always tell people you have to be a little cheesy with yourself, right? Do you find it's difficult that's the most difficult barrier? Because even when people are alone, they're really afraid to feel things, right? There's so much resistance. So how do people get past that because again, people in my own life can't get past it. How do people break down that barrier to get to a point where they can even begin to do this type of work?
Well, here's the problem. When we were growing up, there was a lot of pain for a lot of us, and we had no way to handle it. I certainly had no way to handle my pain. My parents didn't know how to handle their pain. They didn't even know they were causing me pain. So they were no help. And so most of us had no role modeling of what it means to manage our pain. And so we grow up believing that we cannot learn from our pain. Our pain has a lot to teach us, and that we can't manage it. One of the things that we do as we're growing up is that we absorb the protective, controlling, wounded ways of our parents and others, television, teachers, peers, siblings, other caregivers. What we call the wounded self, the ego wounded self. We absorb their anger, their withdrawal, their self-judgment, the way that they ignore their feelings, maybe with alcohol or drugs or food. We learn to turn to many addictions to avoid our feelings. We learn to make other people responsible for our feelings, which creates so many relationship problems. We call these self-abandoning behaviors. We're abandoning ourselves. We're rejecting ourselves when we do this. But we all learn to do this because that's what our parents and others learn to do. So then we grow up and we continue to believe we cannot handle our pain, which as adults is a huge false belief. And so one of the things that people learn in inner bonding is how to uncover these false beliefs that are so limiting them. You know, as you know, it's a step process. It's a 6-step process that anybody can learn that helps people uncover the beliefs that are limiting them and keeping them stuck and keeping them anxious or depressed or guilty or shamed or angry or feeling so alone and empty inside. Actually, all these feelings have vital information about how we're treating ourselves and about the false beliefs that we have, but people don't realize that. They think their feelings are coming from something external. And some of them are feelings like grief or loneliness when we can't connect with someone, or heartbreak when people are really hurtful, or helplessness over others and events. Those are coming from external circumstances. And those were the ones that were hardest to feel. And so we learned to shove them down and not feel them. And in inner bonding, we teach people how to open to these feelings. It's actually, it's nothing like what people think it's going to be. It's not life-threatening. It's not that hard. But they believe it is, and so they resist it.
Yeah, the book talks a ton about being in protective mode, protective with the negative connotation that we should be protecting ourselves in the healthy way. We're actually doing the opposite, thinking that we're protected. It really is so much pride and ego involved in that.
That's right.
And speaking for myself, it's this feeling of I don't want to be weak. I don't want to. I don't even want to go there because it's just so scary to even think about those things. But it's actually being weak not to.
That's right. You're coming from fear.
Right. The strong, courageous thing is to actually sit down with yourself and feel what you're. Even when you talk about real external events, we're allowed to feel those things too. I tell everyone all the time, if you live long enough, you're going to go through that stuff. You're going to have people die. You're going to go through heartbreak. If you live a life, you're going to experience real external pain, but it's how you process it.
That's right. That's right. And what's so essential and what we teach people is how to connect to a higher source of love and comfort and wisdom. What I found with traditional psychotherapy is they don't teach that. They don't teach people how to bring that comfort in. And so, when people learn and practice inner bonding, they do learn to access that love and that compassion and that comfort. I can't go through those feelings without that. I don't think anybody really can. And so learning to access that is vital for learning how to learn from our feelings and allow them to move through us, so they don't get stuck, because those stuck feelings, they can cause illness. A lot of people get sick because they're not feeling their feelings and they're not learning from their feelings.
You can go your whole life that way, right? I mean, I found there were things that even when I first started reading the book, it's funny because before I even got into the part where you even attempt to do it yourself and practice, it was just kind of laying out the framework and giving examples of people. But just reading the examples of one of the men in the book, something hit me that I hadn't thought about my whole life, relating to my own to my father, who I lost a couple years ago, and to my child. And I went, wow. And it was so profound that I had to just even put the book down for a couple hours and kind of absorb what I was feeling. Just reading an example of someone else doing it even opened up these pathways for me, where I was now willing to kind of feel something that I'd been in denial about really my whole life.
Yeah, it's so helpful to know that we're all in the same boat. We're all dealing with the same things. One of the things that I do now is that I've got an inner bonding community where twice a month I get on for an hour and a half, and I bring people through an inner bonding process, and then I talk on a topic, and then I do these short laser sessions with people who are willing to do them publicly.
Oh, wow.
And people in the chat say, oh, thank you for doing that. That's exactly my issue. I've been so helped by that. And so it's so helpful to know that we're not alone. We're not the only ones going through this. Everybody's going through it.
Yeah, I think for me and a lot of other people, that's been my biggest issue is, and the book gets into that a lot too. You know, it talks about people in inner conflict going toward that narcissistic mode or that empathetic, but I've definitely been the guy that goes toward that isolation, narcissistic, woe is me, my problems are worse than anybody's. I don't externally complain to anybody, but inside I'm thinking nobody understands this crazy. And look, I may have less common issues, but it doesn't make them any better or worse. And certainly the stuff that everyone deals with is the same. The human experience, we all go through all of those types of things, and it's a real slippery slope to start thinking that your stuff is worse than other people's.
Yeah, I've been doing this work now for 54 years, and people get on and say, I know this is going to blow you away, or are you just so upset by what I just told you? And what I say is, there's nothing you can tell me, nothing that you've been through, nothing that you're feeling that I haven't dealt with an umpteen number of times. I mean, people think they're so unique, but we're so much alike. We're all going through similar things, and it's so helpful to know that.
Yeah, you must have definitely heard it all over the years.
I have. I definitely have.
I never did think of inner conflict in that context of not only doing the narcissistic selfish stuff, but the other way, where people become overly empathetic, and it's kind of viewed as a good thing externally, because you don't really, they're so it's just go along, agree with everything, sacrifice I need this reinforcement of people thinking I'm great, but
Right.
inside they're just feeling stuck and exhausted, and that's not healthy either. And I've found since reading this, when I see people that are conflicted, they really do go one of those two ways. And not that it's a narcissistic personality disorder. I don't want to mess that up semantically, but they act narcissistically or they act over empathetically.
Yeah, that's right, because our ego wounded self has both those. And we do tend towards one or the other. We tend either towards the side that I'm entitled, people should be taking care of me, poor me, it's your job to make me feel better, or the other side of the caretaker, where, oh, it's my job to make you feel better, and I have to give myself up for you so that then you'll love me. Both are trying to get love in different ways. Yeah. And like you said, when you're caretaking, when you're overly empathic, like I was a caretaker. I was taking care of everybody until I got really, really sick. Because you always think if you're giving, somebody's going to love you, somebody's going to give back, and then they don't. They just keep taking.
Right.
And so I got completely sick and depleted. And, it's just a good thing at that time that inner bonding came in, or I probably would have died because I was so sick. But when I realized that, when Spirit kind of put it all together and showed me these 6 steps, and I started to practice them, I realized, wow, that's why I'm sick, because I had been eating great and exercising, doing everything you're supposed to do, and here I was like life-threateningly ill. But I got well so quickly when I started to learn to love myself. That's the issue. And people know they're supposed to love themselves, but they have no idea what that means. It's not like going to get your nails done or taking a hot bath. And so this is what inner bonding teaches. It's a pathway for truly learning to take responsibility for yourself, for your feelings, for so many areas in life, so that you get all filled up with love. When you learn to do this, you get all filled up with love. Then you get to share love with others, and that is really the greatest experience in life. People think it's getting love. It's not. Getting love does not hold a candle to being able to share love.
That's absolutely true. And it's funny, I find people can do both simultaneously depending on the relationship in their life. They can be the narcissist type and the empathy, and kind of, I'm like that, depending on, because I go, am I really fully? But then it's depending on the specific case, you can kind of alternate between the two, and then you're just on a crazy roller coaster. But what you touched on there, yeah, it's all about self-care and self-love, and it sounds cliche, but if you don't love yourself first, you're never going to have the ability to give it to somebody else. That's crazy. And people think that they're going to get love just by giving. You have to take care of yourself first.
Oh, yeah. The problem with giving is that when you have an agenda, like I had an agenda, I was giving in order to get love. Well, that's not loving. That's controlling. And so whether you're on the narcissistic end or on the caretaking end, you're trying to control. Yep. And whether the other person realizes it or not, they pick up the energy of that. It doesn't feel like love. And so when you're really learning to love yourself and bring love in from the spiritual source, because that is love, spirit is love, and you learn to bring it into your body and fill yourself up, then you have love to share. And when two people are doing that, you're sharing love. That's incredible. That's just amazing. But people think, oh, I'm so giving, I do this and that. And that's what I thought. I thought I was being so loving. And it was a shock for me to realize how controlling I was being, because anytime you give with an agenda, that's not love. That's manipulation.
That's really well said. And I never really recognized that before the way I do now. And you're absolutely right. Something I've been aware of a long time too is just the way that mental and emotional turmoil can manifest physically is insane, right? From migraines to digestive issues to back pain, you name it, to real illnesses even.
Well, to cancer and heart disease.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you talk about too that I like. You just touched on it with helping people to help themselves and having, the book talks a lot about when you first start really caring for yourself, people may be a little off put by that or a little offended because they're so used to you giving or being a certain way, and you start to take care of yourself and they kind of maybe take offense. We all kind of have to do that work ourselves. Heal, be healthy, have the capacity to love and receive love, and then conjoin with the other person, right?
Right. But you're bringing up a very important point here, which is what makes it scary for people. If you've been a caretaker and you've been giving, and then you start to take responsibility for yourself, those people around you might be very angry. Or if you've been on the taker and the narcissistic end, then the caretaker's identity might be to take care of you. And if you start to learn to take care of yourself, they might be very upset with you. So it takes courage. It really does take courage to rock the boat, because when people get together, they have an unwritten contract. For most people, it's from their wounded self. I'll give to you, you'll give to me, we'll caretake, we'll pull, we'll be needy, we'll all this stuff. And then when one person changes the system, the other person might be very angry about it. And so you have to, this was so scary to me, because I had to be willing to find out whether the people who said they loved me really did. Because if you love somebody, you want them to be happy. You want them to learn to love themselves. And so I was scared about my parents and my kids and my husband. Would they support me? And in fact, everything I was afraid of happened. They didn't. And they were mad. And my parents disowned me. Wow. And my kids two of my three kids were mad. my 30-year marriage ended. I mean, it was really hard, but I got me back. I got my vitality, my health, my creativity, my work sword. I mean, a lot of good things happened. It was not easy. It was tough. It did take courage, but it's better than dying. I wasn't ready to die, and I knew if I didn't do this, I would.
That's really inspirational to hear and courageous. And that is true courage to take that stuff and then apply it in real life where there's real changes and real unknowns. Like, it's one thing to theorize about it and recognize it. And that's the first step in the book, is gathering that information of what do I need to do to really heal and take care of myself. But then the ultimate step is, well, now as the adult that understands that, now what do I have to actually do? And then when you do it, it affects everything in your life, from relationships to even, cursory interactions with people.
Yeah, that's right. But it brings you into a higher frequency, which is where we manifest from. And that's what I saw, is that as I really learned to stop trying to control getting love and learn to love myself, my frequency went up and up to the point where I started to be able to manifest things that I never could manifest before. It's amazing what happens when you're operating out of that inner peace, out of that love, out of that joy, rather than out of fear and anxiety and guilt and shame and depression. Those are low frequencies. You don't manifest from that. So you manifest when you're happy, when you're joyful, and then you can co-create with spirit, because spirit exists at a higher frequency. That creativity that exists out there is at a higher frequency than we normally live at. And certainly if we're being victims and poor me and nobody's loving me and I'm miserable, there's no way really to manifest what we want. I mean, certainly people, there's a lot of people who are miserable, but they manifest money through control and intimidation. But I assure you, they are not happy human beings. I see many of these people as clients. They're anxious, they're miserable, even though they might be multi-billionaires. That has not made them happy.
Where does that, and I, as someone who spent a lot of time in the lower frequencies, and I'm big on lately, I was just had a talk to a guy about consciousness and spiritual. I'm very big on trying to tap into that. I know it exists. I've felt it throughout my life that there is this, I'm always hesitant to call it God and all that, and it gets intertwined into religion. But
Right.
where does that frequency come from? We are all connected in some way. Yes, I mean, dissipates very quickly sometimes, and you get caught back up in real life and distracted by all those But where are we pulling that from, do you think?
Well, you see, so my later books really talk about this, because that book that you read, I didn't really know how to have what I now call at-will divine connection.
Okay.
And there are two secrets, basically, that I've written about. One of my books, Diet for Divine Connection, talks about this, that there are two loving actions we need to take in order for our frequency to go high enough to connect with spirit at will. Spirit exists like a hummingbird's wings go really fast. Well, spirit is like that. That's why we don't see spirit, because it vibrates at a higher frequency. If we vibrated at that frequency, we wouldn't see each other. But we can raise the frequency of our energy so that we can connect with spirit. And it takes two things. One is, like you said, in inner bonding, there's two intentions. One is the intention to control, to protect against pain, to avoid our feelings. And the other is the intention to learn about what's loving to ourselves. That intention alone is very powerful. When you truly move into an intention to learn about what's loving to you, what's in your highest good and the highest good of all, it's not a selfish thing, it's what's in everybody's highest good. That raises your frequency. And the other thing is what we put in our bodies, because our bodies have a frequency. And since fast foods and junk foods and processed foods, people's frequency has actually gone down It's dumbed people down, and it's cut off their ability to access their inner knowing and their higher knowing. So if you want your frequency to be high enough to naturally and easily connect with spirit, you need to be eating clean, organic, natural foods. I say the rule of thumb is eat the way people ate 500 years ago, before all this crap that was out there, all this non-food that you see in supermarkets. So if you're eating really well, which I've been doing for 60 years, I eat only organic for the last 60 years, and you stay open to learning. You learn the consciousness of staying open to learning moment by moment. Then you find that connection is actually always there. And it's an amazing way to live, because you not only know that you're connected to everybody, you know you're never alone. You know you're being watched out for. You know you're being told I'm being told things all the time. And that's an amazing way to live, is to be told, oh, this is what you need to do now. This is what's in your highest good now. Oh, watch out for that. That's a great way to live. And that is what allows you to manifest. So I know it's not so easy for people to shift the way they eat and to consciously remember to stay open to learning. But it's a practice. Inner bonding is a practice.
What book is that? Because I'm gonna have you back on after I read that one. What book should I be reading for the spirituality stuff?
That one is Diet for Divine Connection, Beyond Junk Foods and Junk Thoughts to At-Will Spiritual Connection.
I love it. I love that you linked it to the health stuff again. And I always know that, and I always feel that, and I always go through phases where when I start to try to get mentally healthy, it is almost like an automatic response of, I should be getting physically healthy too, and then I'm working out and I'm eating healthier. I've always eaten very healthy, and then I mix in a lot of crap too. And I'm very thin, so I was like, look, I can get away with it. I'm getting all my nutrients, so it's fine that but it really does bog you down.
Well, yeah, and because our soils are so depleted from factory farms, unless you're eating organic produce, you're not getting your nutrients. Don't kid yourself that if you buy broccoli or kale or something from a regular market, you're getting much, because the soils are so depleted.
Yeah, the quality of the produce is nowhere near what it was when I was a kid. And I always go, what do you even have? There shouldn't even have to be organic. Everything should just be.
That's right.
And I get the argument where they say, well, they're able to feed more people and all the, but yeah, I go, it's weird that they even have to say this thing is organic and therefore it costs twice as much. That for sure when I was a kid was not an option. If there was a head of lettuce, it was just all organic lettuce. There was no such thing as non-organic.
Yeah, and that was true until the factory farms came in, took over so much and depleted everything and created produce that has no nutrients and meat that's very toxic with pesticides and antibiotics, and they say it feeds more people, but you know who it's feeding? It's feeding the owners of those factory farms, and it's feeding the people junk that's making them sick. I could go on and on about that, because
I'd love to.
It's responsible for so much of the illness. Just on television the other day, they said, oh, you know what? Processed food is responsible for a lot of cancer and heart disease. Well, I read this 60 years ago. This is not news. And they're just saying it now. When I was a kid, nobody had cancer. Nobody had diabetes. And certainly no kids, and nobody was fat.
Yeah.
The kids didn't have autism. They didn't have ADHD. They didn't have, this is all due to the food. And people don't want to know that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, you can just look around, like you said, you can look around at people and you can see how unhealthy everybody is.
That's
Especially
right.
once they started putting the corn syrup was the worst. They started putting that in everything. And yeah, I've been big on that for a while, but then, I caved to it as well. I'm not good at being disciplined the way I should be, but I can tell you as I get older, I feel the importance of it. So you can get away with a little more, I guess, when you're younger too, but you start to feel your mortality as you get older in a different way. And to be honest, it was after losing my dad, who wasn't that old. He was 70, and he'd struggled with an illness his whole life and all that. But I thought, man, he's gone now, and that could be me soon, tomorrow, whatever. It's like that's actually when I started getting extra healthy and taking a lot more, natural supplements, and making like very healthy smoothies and trying to do all that kind of. I felt like I'd been neglecting my physical health so long, and yeah, the way it also affects your mental health.
Does. And people think, well, I'm young and I'm not overweight and blah, blah, blah. But you don't realize that what's going on in your body, and it'll suddenly hit you. And along with the high fructose corn syrup is the industrial seed oils. And you can't buy anything that doesn't have that, even if it says like organic canola or sunflower or safflower. These oils are very toxic, and people don't realize it. And they're in every processed food. And that's another reason for using fresh and using the natural oils, like, the olive oil or the avocado oil, things like that people use, for thousands of years. John, I'm going to be 83 in 2 weeks.
Wow. Holy cow. I would not have guessed that, and I didn't look up your birthday, but yeah, you look amazing for 83.
And I'm really healthy. I mean, I don't have anything wrong with me.
That's amazing. It's inspirational. People always, I think, like you said, you think you get away with it. I'm thin. People always think I look young. I'm 43. When I was 30, everyone thought I was in high school. So I never really thought about aging in that way. And that I just go, like, I have good genetics. Yeah. You don't think about that stuff when you're just going through life. And you can go such a long time. You can go decades ignoring such basic essentials, and then it hits you one day and you're like, how did I go that long thinking that way? Or how did I go that long believing that thing? That's what really what the book is so great, is everyone has some sort of false beliefs under there. Some sort of lies they've been telling themselves forever, for whatever reason. It could have started when you were a baby or anything else. And we really do have these false belief systems. And when the book first came to me, I thought, because I am resistant to that stuff. And I go, I know myself better than anyone. I don't have false beliefs. I know what my issues are. I've always known what my issues are. I could tell you what my childhood issues are. But then within half the book, I went, wow, I just discovered 3 or 4 things about myself that I hadn't really ever thought about before.
Well, and it's ongoing. I mean, it's not like we ever totally know ourselves. Life is a process of evolution. And if we knew everything, it would be pretty boring. So to me, it's an adventure of learning and growing. I think we're on the planet to evolve in our ability to love, and it has to start with ourselves so that then we can share it with others, and to learn to experience that oneness. Imagine what our planet would be like if people experienced oneness with everybody and everything, with all of life on the planet. We would not be in this shape if people actually felt that. And that is what happens when people practice inner bonding. When they get to know who they are in their true soul essence, which we call the inner child. It's not really a child. It's the part of us that communicates through our feelings. But the reason we call it inner child is that we know we have to take responsibility for a child, but most people don't think about taking responsibility for their feelings. And that soul is our source of inner guidance. It offers us so much information. And when we can really get to know who we are on that level, we start to be able to see that in each other. Regardless of race or gender or age or anything, we start to be able to see the soul in each other and imagine what would happen on our planet if people could do that.
Yeah, I think about it often, and we've never been more polarized and tribal, and we seem to be going in the opposite direction, unfortunately. I just thought of it specifically yesterday and mentioned it online because of the 9/11 anniversary. And one of the main things I remember about 9/11, as I'm sure you do too, is how loving and united everybody was in the aftermath from all sides. And I've never felt or witnessed that in my life to that degree. And I know that's just a microcosm, a small one of what you're talking about there, but the way that people were so loving and respectful toward each other for almost a year, I feel like, after that happened, from all political spectrums and walks of life. And there was a loving and an empathy, and then it all kind of went away because it was based on response to this. But yeah, if people imagine if just in this country people acted the way they acted in the aftermath of 9/11 just because it felt good and it was the right thing to do.
Well, yeah, and imagine if they not only understood the oneness with humanity, but with the planet.
Yes.
They couldn't be doing what they're doing to the planet out of greed. I mean, that's what it is. It's out of greed, but they couldn't be doing that. Like the indigenous people have always felt a oneness with the trees, with the earth. They've always known how to take care of it. And so when you feel that, when you feel your inner soul connection, and when you feel your higher connection, then you feel the oneness to all of life. And that makes a huge difference in how you treat yourself and each other and the planet.
Isn't it that we're so detached and distracted, and I what you just mentioned there is something I always ponder all the time openly. I say, people that lived long ago, ancient civilizations, and they must have been so much more in touch with nature because there was nothing to distract you. It'd be as if we were all just living off the land. No electricity, no transportation. Their job was to care for their family, to feed their family, to protect their family. And there was really nothing beyond that. There wasn't commerce even. So you must have just been able to like you said, the spiritual part is always there. You can always tap into it. They must have really been in tune with it almost all of the time because there was nothing there to then pull them out of it.
Yeah, that's right. And they were in touch. They were in touch with what they call Great Spirit or whatever, and that the land was a part of that. And what's happening today, because of our climate change, is people are going back to the indigenous people and saying, "What do we do? How do we survive? We've wrecked so much, and we're continuing to wreck so much by cutting down rainforests that are the lungs of the planet and having no respect." I read this great book called Regeneration by Paul Hawkins. He talks about all these different ways that people are helping the planet. But one of the things that blew me away is that they cut down these old trees to give people soft toilet paper. But cutting down these old trees, oh my God, that hurts my heart.
Well, you mentioned before all these oils. I saw a documentary years ago on palm oil, which I'm sure you're aware. That's the worst. They're just tearing down thousands of acres of rainforest every day. In I think Indonesia and other places, just to put palm oil in everything, in toothpaste and shampoo and foods. It's like, and they say, a lot of the medicines and cures that we have from antibiotics, they come from these rainforests where things have mutated and evolved over thousands of years to be resistant, and we're destroying things before ever even discovering them. I mean, these are, like you said, thousands of years old.
That's right. But you see, when people learn and practice inner bonding, they get to know that they're not their ego wounded self. The wounded self wants you to think that's who you are, but it's not who you are. We created our wounded self. Spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, created our true soul essence. And most people don't know who they are, but in inner bonding, they do get to know who they are. They get to see and love and value who they are. And then, of course, they can see and love and value others. And that's one of the things that happens with people who practice inner bonding. They just become so much more caring towards themselves, towards others, towards animals, towards the planet.
Yeah, the key word that sticks with me throughout the book, and then, I've totally stolen it from you as far as other rants I give all the time, is just the openness. And it's such a simple word of open, but we're so quick, and I'm so quick to be closed and resistant as a knee jerk. And whether
Right.
it's feeling something for myself or understanding something else, like I said, I've always been so analytical. And so I think I kind of tricked myself into thinking, well, because I'm thinking deeply about this thing,
Yeah.
but I wasn't being open, and I certainly wasn't being open to feeling things myself. I think once you go into that mode, and I do it all the time now when something arises, I just think of that word, open. I am open to feeling this, whatever it may be, good, bad, ugly. I'm open to it, and I'm not going to be afraid, because when you resist a feeling, if something's trying to come in and you're trying to push it out, it's just going to sit there
Right.
indefinitely. You have to let it kind of go through you. It's
Also
like,
want to learn from it. That's,
yes,
want to open. You want to learn what our feelings have so much information for us.
there's a lesson in there. Yeah, that's the key, right? What
Yeah, that's the
information
key.
am I getting from it? You really can, like you said, it's not a real child in there. And people, listen, for anyone listening, trust me, I know how cheesy it sounds to say sit down and talk to your inner child, and especially for a man, if you're a 40-something-year-old man like me, you're going to sit there, but you should. You really should. And I promise you, you'll be surprised that you'll get real answers and real information from yourself of things that you didn't even know you were thinking and feeling. And that it is a really mind-blowing thing. And trust me, like I said, I'm as cynical as anybody, but it really is something. And I never realized I could communicate with myself and get real-time information like that before.
Yeah. And, the thing about inner bonding is there's a lot of ways for people to learn it. There's a lot of videos, books. We have free course on the website, innerbonding.com. We have other courses that go very deeply. There's just many ways that people can learn it. If they want to learn it, they can. And I just really want to encourage people. This is, like you saying, it's really life-changing.
Where do people, you mentioned innerbonding.com, is that where they should go if they want to find you, find the resources, sign up for courses, all that? Where do people find you?
Right, innerbonding.com. We have, and people can get help. I work with people. We have many, many well-trained facilitators. We have a fabulous facilitator training program that people all over the world are doing inner bonding and working with facilitators in different countries and different languages. And so there's help for anybody who wants help.
I'm going to sign up for some sessions. Here's what I find in life and society, and why I think this is so helpful, is that 99% of the stuff that plagues people is based on other people and other people's behavior and their concerns about what other people are saying or doing or thinking. And it's like, if you remove that and just kind of think about yourself in the context of the universe, it really, almost all of what people are worrying about all day doesn't mean a thing. And it won't mean a thing in a month from now or a year from now, and certainly at the end of their life. You really have to look at your own journey and your connection, like you said, not only with other people, but with your spirit and the universe itself. And it opens up a whole different way to feel loving and nurturing.
Yeah, and the research shows that the real joyful people are the people who are offering love and help to others. But when you're abandoning yourself in all these ways, then you might be trying to do good, but that doesn't bring you joy. What brings you joy is being filled up with love and then sharing it with those people who are open to that. And that's the real help, and that's the real joy. And that's what happens when people practice inner bonding.
It's true, and I've been terrible at it. And I like to say what I found is that, feeling useful feels good, in a real way, not the over, but to actually be, and that to me is real love too. And it's something I've really, because I am a bit antisocial, what's the word, misanthropic, right? And I am kind of very quick to be kind of turned off to people. But what I found is when I am more open to it, I have all kinds of weird encounters and experiences that I wouldn't have before, where I'm talking to someone and I'm actually listening and understanding what they're trying to say. And I never would have been in a place to even want to do that before. I was much more dismissive.
Yeah, well, that's great, because that's where the sharing of love is.
Yes. And I'm gonna read the next book with the spiritual stuff. Tell me the title of that one more time. Tell everybody the title of that.
There are books. There's Diet for Divine Connection. There's the Inner Bonding Workbook, which people really want to learn inner bonding. That's a great way to learn. And then I've got two even more recent books, 6 Steps to Total Self-Healing and How to Become Strong Enough to Love. So those 4 books are my more recent books. And all of them are very, very helpful.
Guys, go check those out. Seriously, I really do want people to try this the way I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I try to, people are, again, I try it with friends and family in my own life. And they go, yeah, I read it. Or, they didn't really, they really didn't sit down and you got to let those walls down. If you're not going to let the walls down and you're just going to read it, because if you're going to read it in protective mode, you're defeating the entire purpose.
The best way to help other people is just to help ourselves and become a role model.
That's a great point. If they see you doing it in your life, that's really, because people do, and I'm like this too, it has to be your own decision. I'm like that to a fault. In fact, if someone tells me to do something, I'll purposely not do it. Or I'll wait a sufficient amount of time so that they don't think it was their idea. It's got to be my idea, right?
Yeah, but if they're just role modeling it instead of telling you what to do, you're much more likely to want to know what they're doing if you see them being happy and joyful and successful in their lives.
It's one of the main things, and I know I've kept you too long, but that's one of the main things plaguing society, and you're absolutely right. When I see other people doing stuff that I admire, that inspires me more than anything to do it. But I feel like a lot of people are so resentful and they're in such a shameful place that they see other people's success and they see people doing well and they resent it. And they want to bring people down to their...
That's the ego. That's the ego wounded self. It's always competitive, resentful, comparing yourself to others. But when you're operating in your heart as a loving adult connected to spirit, you're happy for everybody who's happy and successful.
Happy for people's success, and then allow it to inspire you, like you said. Because if there's stuff you want in life, somebody's doing it, and you can look at them and say, what are they doing that I should be doing? And yeah, they don't have to tell you a thing. You should be just taking that on yourself and emulating it, right?
Right.
Thank you so much for coming on here. Very gracious of you. I really, truly appreciate it. I am going to read some more of your books, and hopefully I can get you back on here at some point for some more discussion. That would be amazing.
Okay, great.
And for everybody listening, I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will be back in a few days with another episode for you. Thank you so much. Be good. Peace.